The council chamber of Frosthaven was never built for warmth. Even in summer, when the sun lingered low on the horizon, its stones clung to the chill of the mountains. On this night, the hall was colder still, not for lack of fire but for the eyes that turned upon Rohan as he entered. The flames of a dozen braziers licked high, banners of the wolf and the stag fluttered from the rafters, and yet the room was ice. Lords, elders, and captains watched their lord with the silence of hunters before a kill. Only the steady creak of the High Elder's staff broke the stillness. Rohan felt it all, the weight of whispers that had followed him since the frontier. Sorcery, curse, half man, half shadow. And though he walked straight, shoulders squared, he carried inside him a sickness heavier than any wound. The black crystal against his chest throbbed, each beat a reminder that Kaelor's laughter had not left him. Aelin shadowed him, her hand resting close to the dagger at her belt. Not against him, but against the council itself, should their doubt turn to open treachery. Her eyes scanned the room with the sharpness of a hawk's, yet even she could not silence the growing unease. The High Elder raised his staff, and the hall rumbled with the sound of benches scraping as the lords stood. Tradition demanded reverence, suspicion soured it. Lord Rohan, the Elder began, his voice carrying the authority of a century of winters, you return victorious. Raiders lie scattered, their chieftain slain. But you return, change. The words hung like frost. Rohan forced himself to meet the old man's eyes. Changed, yes. Battle changes all who face it. Would you have me return weaker? A ripple of discontent passed through the council. Lord Dareth's fist struck the table. We would have you return untainted. Our men speak of ice leaping from your blade, of enemies shattered like glass. That is not the strength of men, but of sorcery. Lady Eris rose, her fur-lined cloak whispering as she moved. Frosthaven was not built by spells. It was carved in blood and stone. Will we now kneel to a lord who bears the mark of witchcraft? The chamber erupted, voices rising, overlapping, accusations flung like arrows. Rohan's jaw tightened. He could see it. The seeds of doubt, planted and now spreading like cracks across ice. The elder's staff struck the floor once, twice. Silence returned, but brittle, fragile. You must prove yourself, the elder said, his tone grave. The flame of the ancestors will judge. If you are blessed, the fire will not burn you. If cursed, it will consume you. The words landed like a hammer. Aelin's breath hissed between her teeth. Trial by flame. A rite older than Frosthaven itself, invoked only when the soul of a leader was in question. Rohan's hands curled into fists. He wanted to shout, to curse them all for blind fear. Yet deep inside, where the crystal pulsed against his heart, another truth whispered. What if they are right? What if the frost is no longer mine to command, but his? Kaelor's laughter flickered in his mind like a shadow in the firelight. The elder's gaze did not waver. Tomorrow, before the gathered banners of Frosthaven, you will walk the fire. And we will see what blood runs in your veins. Aelin's hand tightened on Rohan's arm. You can refuse, she whispered. But Rohan knew he could not. To refuse was to admit guilt. To submit was to risk damnation. He lifted his head, voice steady though his insides burned. Very well. Tomorrow, I face the flame. The council stirred, some with relief, others with grim satisfaction. The fate of Frosthaven's lord was sealed to fire. And in the unseen corners of the chamber, a shadow stirred, Kaelor's eyes watching, savoring. Burn, wolf, the sorcerer's voice whispered through the stone. Burn, and rise in my image. The firelight guttered, as if in agreement. The night before the trial was a long one. Frosthaven's keep was a fortress of stone and silence, but every corridor whispered. Servants who once greeted Rohan with bowed heads now turned aside. Guards who had ridden with him in battle shifted uneasily at their posts, unable to meet his gaze. Word had spread faster than snow across the valley. Their lord would face the flame. In his chamber, the hearth burned low. Shadows clung to the walls, shifting as though alive. Rohan sat alone at the long oaken table, armor laid out before him, sword resting across his knees. He ran his thumb along the blade's edge, the steel cold, the memory colder. He had cut down raiders with it, yes, but the frost that had leapt from its steel had been no work of his own hand. The crystal at his breastplate pulsed faintly, a second heartbeat. Every throb seemed louder in the silence. He could almost hear Kaelor's voice within it. You think the fire will save you, the sorcerer whispered, soft as a lover's breath. But fire burns only flesh. It cannot touch what is already mine. Rohan slammed his fist against the table, the sound echoing through the stone chamber. I am no one's, he snarled. A knock came at the door. Low, hesitant. Enter, Rohan called. It was Aelin. She slipped inside, closing the door behind her. She had shed her armor, clad instead in plain leathers, but her dagger was never far from her hand. Her eyes, usually sharp and unyielding, softened when they fell on him. You haven't slept, she said. Nor have you. She gave a ghost of a smile but moved closer, resting her palms on the table. They mean to test you, Rohan. Not just the council, the people. If the flame spares you, they'll kneel again. If it does not, then I burn. His voice was flat. Her hands curled against the wood. I should take you from this place. Now, ride north, beyond the passes. You could gather men still loyal, carve out a stronghold where no elder's word can bind you. Rohan studied her face. Fierce, loyal, ready to set the world aflame for him. And yet, if I flee, they'll call me guilty. Every whisper will become truth. Frosthaven will tear itself apart. And if you stay, Kaelor wins, she snapped. The name hung in the air like poison. For a moment, Rohan thought she might be right. Every time the crystal's power surged, Kaelor's laughter followed. Was he already a pawn, walking willingly into fire? He stood, crossing to the window slit. Outside, the courtyard lay blanketed in snow, torchlight flickering against the walls. Beyond, the mountains loomed, jagged and endless. His home, his burden. I was born to these stones, he said quietly. If Frosthaven burns, it will not be by my flight. If I must burn, let it be here, before their eyes. Aelin came to his side, her breath misting in the cold air. Then let me stand with you in the hall. If they mean to see you consumed, they'll have to walk through me first. Rohan turned to her, the weight of her vow pressing against the weight already on his shoulders. No, Aelin. If the fire takes me, you must be the one to lead them. Do you hear me? Keep them together. Keep them from falling into Kaelor's hands. Her eyes shone in the dim firelight. And if the fire spares you? His lips curved in a grim smile. Then we'll both have a war to fight. The crystal pulsed again, stronger, almost mocking. In its depths, Rohan thought he heard a faint crackle, not of fire but of ice. Kaelor's voice whispered once more, tomorrow, wolf. Tomorrow I claim you, in flame or frost. Rohan closed his eyes. He could almost feel the heat already. The day of the trial dawned beneath a sky of iron. Snow fell in a slow, steady veil, muting sound, shrouding Frosthaven in pale silence. Yet within the walls of the keep, there was no silence, only the growing murmur of a crowd gathering for spectacle. The courtyard had been cleared, its center prepared for the ancient rite. Atop a dais of stone sat the flame of the ancestors, an eternal fire said to have burned since the first lords of Frosthaven bent their knee to the gods. The flames leapt high, gold and scarlet, casting heat even into the bitter morning. Priests in heavy white robes circled the dais, their chants rising and falling like the wind through mountain peaks. Rohan walked between his guards, the crowd parting as he passed. The people of Frosthaven lined the walls and steps, bundled in furs, their faces pinched with cold and fear. Whispers rippled wherever he stepped. There he is, the cursed one. They say ice burst from his blade. Will the fire consume him? Rohan kept his gaze forward, his jaw tight. His armor gleamed dully in the gray light, but the crystal beneath pulsed like a hidden wound. At the foot of the dais stood the council. Lord Dareth, tall and stern, eyes burning with suspicion. Lady Eris, lips curled in a sneer, as though she tasted corruption in the air. And the High Elder, his staff trembling in one hand, his expression grave but unreadable. The elder raised his staff, and silence spread. Rohan of Frosthaven, he intoned, voice echoing against the stone. Called Lord, called Iceborn, called cursed. You stand accused of wielding sorcery not of man's making, of bringing darkness into our hall, of endangering your people with power unbidden. Rohan's voice carried clear, steady. I stand accused of saving your sons and daughters when raiders came to burn your homes. If that is guilt, then let your fire be my judge. A rumble moved through the crowd, some in approval, others in doubt. The elder motioned. 2 priests stepped forward, carrying chains of silver. Runes glowed faintly along the links. They draped them across Rohan's arms and shoulders, binding him lightly. The metal bit cold against his skin, colder than the snow, colder even than the crystal. He mounted the dais, step by step, until he stood before the flame. The fire roared, as though it sensed him. Its heat pressed against his face, but beneath his breastplate the crystal throbbed, cool and defiant. Aelin stood at the edge of the crowd, her eyes fixed on him. Her hand rested on the hilt of her dagger, though she could do nothing here. Not now. The elder spoke once more. Step into the fire. If the gods claim you, we shall know your soul is tainted. If you emerge unscathed, we shall call you blessed and Lord anew. Rohan drew a slow breath. He could feel every eye upon him, every whisper, every hope, every fear. He thought of the men who had followed him into battle, the children who now hid from his gaze, the council who schemed in the shadows. He thought of Kalor's laughter, curling like smoke in his skull. And then he stepped forward. The flames closed around him. Heat blazed against his skin, his armor, his breath. For an instant, terror seized him, the instinct to recoil, to scream. But he forced himself still, standing tall within the fire. The crowd gasped. Some cried out in awe, others in horror. Rohan's vision swam. The flames were not gold now, nor scarlet. They were white, white as snow, white as the frost that leapt from his blade. The fire licked across his body but did not burn. Instead, it chilled, a searing cold that sank into his bones. And in that white blaze, he saw a figure. A throne of ice and blood. A crown of frost upon a shadowed brow. And eyes he knew. Kalor's. The sorcerer's voice filled the fire, mocking and triumphant. See, wolf? Even the flame bends to me. You are not theirs. You are mine. Rohan's knees buckled. He forced himself upright, the chains rattling, his breath ragged. He clenched his fists, fighting to drown out the laughter. But the crowd could see only the miracle. Their lord standing unburned within fire. When at last he staggered from the flames, the chants of the priests faltered into stunned silence. The people fell to their knees. Iceborn, they cried. Iceborn. But as their voices rose, Rohan felt only the crystal's pulse and Kalor's whisper, coiled like a knife at his throat. The fire had not claimed him. The people of Frosthaven knelt in the snow, their cries echoing from the stone walls. Iceborn, Iceborn. The chant rose like a storm tide, fueled by awe, fear, and something perilously close to worship. Rohan stood at the center of it all, chains still hanging from his shoulders, his breath steaming in the cold. The fire had not touched him, but its memory still burned in his veins, not of heat, but of Kalor's laughter, the shadow in the flame that had claimed him. He could not show it. He must not. The High Elder leaned on his staff, his face pale, lips trembling. For the first time, his voice wavered. The fire has judged. It does not consume him. He is marked, yes, but marked by something beyond our ken. By this trial, the gods have spoken. The council stirred uneasily. Lady Arissa's eyes narrowed to slits, her lips drawn taut with fury. Lord Dareth's jaw clenched, his knuckles whitening as he gripped the hilt of his sword. They had hoped for his destruction. Instead, the crowd saw a savior reborn. Aelin pushed through the throng, her dagger hidden beneath her cloak, her gaze fixed on Rohan. She saw the strain in his face, the flicker of pain he tried to hide. She knew, she alone, that victory came at a price. Rohan lifted his bound arms high, chains glinting in the firelight. His voice rang out over the crowd. People of Frosthaven, you have seen with your own eyes. The flame has not claimed me. I fight not for myself, but for all of you, against raiders, against hunger, against the cold itself. If that power makes me cursed, then I embrace it, for your sakes. The crowd roared, surging closer, reaching for him as though to touch the proof of his miracle. Lady Aris whispered sharply to Dareth, her words a blade meant for no ears but his. He must not live to use this moment. Already they name him Iceborn. Already they bend their knees. If we do not cut him down tonight, Frosthaven will be his. Dareth's eyes flicked to Rohan, then to the sea of kneeling townsfolk. He had fought beside Rohan once, had broken bread with him. But the hunger for power, the terror of sorcery, twisted his loyalty into ash. He gave a single, curt nod. Aelin reached Rohan's side as the guards unclasped his chains. You should rest, she urged, her voice low. You look as though the fire took half your strength. He forced a smile that did not reach his eyes. Rest will not come easily. Not now. Behind them, the High Elder's staff struck stone thrice. "So let it be known," he proclaimed, though his voice trembled with unease. "Rohan of Frosthaven has passed the trial of flame. He is judged, not cursed, but chosen. Let all bear witness." The crowd's cheer rose to the heavens. Bells tolled from the towers. Snow fell thicker, soft as ash, cloaking the keep in white. But in the shadowed cloisters above, Eris and Dareth slipped away, their cloaks drawn tight. "Tonight," Eris hissed, her breath steaming, "before the people crown him king in all but name." "And if he lives?" Dareth asked grimly. "Then Frosthaven will fall, not to raiders, not to winter, but to the thing that lives inside him." Far below, Rohan raised his hands once more, basking in the people's devotion. Yet Kalor's whisper coiled in his ear, mocking the cheers, twisting them into chains. "See how they kneel, Wolf. They kneel for me, not for you. You are the vessel, nothing more." Rohan closed his eyes for the briefest instant, fighting the dread that hollowed his chest. He did not yet see the dagger meant for his back. But the night was coming. And with it, blood. Night fell heavy on Frosthaven. The bells that had once rung in triumph now lay silent, muffled beneath falling snow. Torches burned in the courtyards, their flames struggling against the biting wind. The people had returned to their homes, whispering of miracles, of fire that had spared a cursed lord. Some prayed, others sharpened knives. Within the keep, Rohan sat alone in the great hall. The fire in the hearth blazed high, but he felt no warmth. His sword rested across his knees, his hands gripping the hilt as though it anchored him to the world. Shadows danced on the stone walls, flickering like specters. Aelin entered quietly, her footsteps soft on the rushes. "You should be with them," she said. "Your men feast, your people sing. Tonight you are their hope." Rohan did not look up. His eyes were locked on the flames. "Hope built on lies," he murmured. "The fire did not cleanse me. It revealed what I am." They cheered because they do not see it yet. "They see their lord," Aelin insisted, kneeling beside him. "The man who has fought for them, bled for them. Whatever the crystal is, whatever Kalor's curse has done, it does not erase who you are." Her words might have soothed him, but before he could reply, a faint sound stirred beyond the doors, the creak of hinges, the scrape of boots. Rohan stiffened. Aelin's hand went to her dagger. The hall doors swung open. 2 guards entered, bowing low. "My lord," one said, "we bring wine from the council's cellars, a gift for your victory." Rohan's eyes narrowed. "At this hour?" The second guard stepped forward, holding a flask wrapped in cloth. His hand trembled slightly, too slightly. The scent of crushed wolfsbane drifted faintly on the air. Poison. In an instant, Rohan was on his feet, sword flashing free. The first guard's eyes widened, but too late. Steel split the air. The man fell, blood blooming on the rushes. The second lunged, dagger drawn, but Aelin moved swifter, slashing across his throat. The flask shattered on the stones, dark liquid soaking into the floor. Rohan's breath came ragged, fury burning in his chest. "Who sent you?" he demanded, seizing the dying man by the collar. Blood bubbled on the assassin's lips, but no words came, only a cruel smile before he collapsed, lifeless. Aelin wiped her blade, her eyes sharp. "They will not stop. You humiliated them today. They will strike again, and harder." "Eris," Rohan growled. "Or Dareth, perhaps both." He turned to the shattered flask, to the stain spreading on the floor. The thought of his own council plotting his death ignited something cold within him. "They would murder their own lord," he said darkly. "In secret, like cowards. They would see Frosthaven fall into chaos, rather than bend the knee to me." Aelin laid a hand on his arm. "Then we strike first. But not in anger, in cunning. Expose them before the people, and their power dies." Rohan's jaw tightened. The crystal pulsed faintly at his chest, warm as a heartbeat. He could almost hear Kalor's laughter, urging him to take another path, a quicker one. "Kill them, Wolf. End this charade. Let your frost carve the truth in their bones." Rohan closed his eyes, wrestling with the voice. The fire had spared him, but the shadow within had not. At last, he opened them again. "No," he said to himself as much as to Aelin. "Not yet. Tomorrow, the council will face me in open hall. Let them speak their venom in the light." Outside, the snow fell heavier, blanketing Frosthaven in silence. But in the shadows of the keep, Lady Eris sharpened her blade, and Lord Dareth tightened the straps of his armor. The night was not done. And before dawn, blood would stain the stones again. Dawn broke gray and bitter, the light thin as a blade drawn across the horizon. The bells of Frosthaven tolled, summoning the lords and ladies of the council to the high chamber. Their voices rose with the smoke of hearthfires, carried on the wind like crows circling carrion. Rohan strode through the keep's corridors with Aelin at his side. His men trailed behind, silent, grim-faced, blades at their hips. They had heard of the knight's treachery. Whispers spread fast in Frosthaven, but no word had yet escaped beyond the walls. That silence was a weapon, and Rohan meant to wield it. As the heavy doors of the council chamber swung open, the lords were already gathered. Banners of Frosthaven's noble houses draped the stone pillars, their colors dim beneath torchlight. Faces turned toward him, some curious, some fearful, others sharp with calculation. Lady Eris sat draped in crimson furs, her lips curved in a smile that held no warmth. Lord Dareth stood by her side, hands clasped behind his back, his hawk-like gaze fixed on Rohan. "My lord," Eris purred as he entered, "you honor us. We feared, after your ordeal last night, you might not rise with the dawn." The words hung in the air like a poisoned dart. A murmur rippled through the chamber, carefully measured, never too loud, never too soft. Rohan stepped into the circle, his boots echoing on the stone floor. He let his silence stretch, let it bite into them, until the weight of it pressed against their throats. When he spoke, his voice was steady, cold. "Last night, 2 men entered my hall. They brought wine laced with wolfsbane. They did not leave alive." Gasps shuddered through the chamber. Lord Dareth's jaw tightened. Eris merely arched a brow. In outrage, one councilman said, rising. "Who would dare?" "Save your pretenses," Rohan cut him off. "We know who sent them." His gaze swept the room, settling on Eris and Dareth. "Only this chamber knew of my vigil. Only here could the plot have been born." Dareth's voice was sharp as steel. "You accuse without proof. Any number of enemies might have wished your death. Raiders, spies, the witch's kin in the north. Yet you turn on your own counsel? Dangerous words, my lord. Dangerous deeds," Rohan snarled. "You would murder your lord and plunge Frosthaven into ruin. Do not speak to me of danger." Eris laughed softly, her jeweled fingers tapping the arm of her chair. "How quick you are to cry treason, wolf of Frosthaven. Perhaps the crystal whispers too loudly in your ear. Perhaps it is not your counsel you should fear, but yourself." The chamber stirred again, louder now. Accusation against counter-accusation, voices rising like a storm. Some called for blood, others for restraint. Old alliances cracked and splintered beneath the weight of fear. Aelin stepped forward, her hand on her blade. "Enough. My lord has proof enough. The flask, the poison, the dead assassins. Their silence speaks louder than words. Will you all stand idle while traitors nest among you?" But Eris was quicker, her smile sharp as glass. "If assassins died, we have only Rohan's word for it. His word, and the word of the woman who follows him like a shadow." She leaned forward, her voice carrying. "Tell me, counsel, who here saw the corpses? Who tasted the poison? Or is this but a tale, woven to silence dissent?" A heavy silence followed. Suspicion gleamed in too many eyes. The chamber was no longer united in fear of Kaelor or the raiders. It was divided, teetering on the edge of civil fracture. Rohan's fists clenched at his sides. The crystal throbbed against his chest, hot, eager. He could end this now. A single surge of frost, and their lives would die with them. His enemies begged for it with every mocking smile. "Do it," Kaelor's voice coiled through his mind, smooth as silk. "Burn the rot away. Rule by fear, as all kings must." Rohan forced the thought down. His eyes met Eris's, 2 predators circling, neither striking, both waiting for blood. At last, he spoke, his voice iron. "Then let the people decide. Tonight, in the great square, I will show them the truth. If any doubt me, let them come and see the poison with their own eyes. Let them see the treachery that festers in their council." The words struck the chamber like a hammer. No lord could argue, not without revealing fear of the people's judgment. Eris's smile faltered, just for a heartbeat. Then it returned, sharper still. "As you wish, wolf. Tonight, then, let the people judge." But beneath the furs at her breast, she tightened her grip on the dagger hidden there. Tonight, the square would not be a trial. It would be a battlefield. By dusk, Frosthaven's great square was packed shoulder to shoulder. Snow fell in heavy flakes, melting where it struck the torches and braziers that lined the space. The people had come hungry, not for bread, but for truth. Whispers surged like restless tides. The Lord commands fire. He says the council plots against him. Or is it he who plots against us all? Rohan stood on the stone dais at the square's heart, his black furs dusted with snow, his sword sheathed but close. Aelin stood at his right, her presence taut as a drawn bowstring. Before them lay the shattered flask, its shards gleaming under torchlight, and a cloth-wrapped vial of the dark liquid that had nearly ended his life. The council arrayed themselves opposite. Lady Eris, cloaked in crimson, moved with the grace of a serpent. Lord Dareth stood beside her, stiff-backed, his eyes raking the crowd as if measuring their loyalty like coin. The rest shifted uneasily, wary of standing too close to either side. Rohan's voice cut through the clamor. People of Frosthaven, last night, assassins crept into my hall with poisoned wine. They carried Wolfsbane, a killer's draft. They were silenced, but their plot was clear. It was not raiders. It was not Kalor's shadows. It was born here, in your council. He gestured to the flask. Murmurs rippled outward. Some nodded, others scowled. Lady Eris stepped forward, her voice smooth as honey. And we have only your word, my lord? Only your tale, spun in secret chambers? Perhaps you smashed that flask yourself. Perhaps it is not poison at all. Gasps and mutters stirred. Then let them see, Aelin snapped, striding forward. She snatched the vial, uncorking it with a sharp motion. The bitter scent of Wolfsbane drifted into the air, enough to make the closest villagers recoil. She held it high. This is no tale. This is murder in a bottle. Still, Eris did not flinch. Her smile curved. Then prove it. Let one of your own drink. Or shall we call a healer to test it before all? The trap was clear. Proof or no proof, the seed of doubt had been planted. Rohan felt it in the crowd's shifting mood, saw it in their narrowed eyes. Before he could speak, Dareth's voice thundered, and what of the fire? What of the curse? Did not all see him walk from the flame untouched? Is that the mark of a man, or of sorcery? The crowd roared, torn between awe and fear. Some shouted his name in praise, others spat on the ground. Rohan raised his hand, demanding silence. Yes, I carry a curse. Kalor's crystal binds to me, but I did not choose it. I fight it every day. And last night, while you slept safe, I fought men who carried death into my hall. His words struck like steel, but even as they did, Eris moved. With a sudden flourish, she cast a dagger into the square. It clattered across the stone, gleaming in torchlight. Then let the gods judge, she cried. Trial by steel. If your cause is just, strike me down before your people. If not, if you fear the truth, then you will not raise your hand. The crowd erupted, voices splitting like storm winds. Some clamored for blood, others for mercy. Rohan's heart thundered. The crystal pulsed against his chest, urging, demanding. He saw Eris standing tall, her eyes daring him. He saw the people leaning forward, desperate for a verdict not of words, but action. Take it, Kalor whispered, laughter curling in his mind. One stroke, Wolf. One stroke, and they will kneel. Aelin's voice cut close, sharp as a blade. Don't. If you kill her now, you lose them all. This is what she wants. Rohan's hand hovered near his sword. His people waited, breathless. His enemies baited him, grinning. The night balanced on a knife's edge. And in that silence, a horn sounded from beyond the gates. Long, low, mournful. A war horn. The square froze. The raiders had returned. The horn's cry still hung in the night when the gates of Frosthaven shook. A thunder of drums followed, rolling down from the white hills. Torches flared in the storm beyond the walls, a sea of lights moving as one. The crowd scattered into panic. Mothers pulled children from the square, men grabbed whatever weapons they could find. But the council stayed rooted, staring toward the gates with disbelief. Impossible, Lord Dareth muttered. The frontier is secured. Rohan broke them. Aelin's voice was cold. Then these are not the same raiders. These march like an army. Eris's smirk faltered at last. She had sought to bleed Rohan with politics, but outside the walls, real blood was coming. Rohan's hand clenched the hilt of his sword. For a moment, Kalor's crystal burned hot against his chest, almost eager, as if it too had scented the oncoming slaughter. He forced a breath, steadying himself. To the gates, he roared. Every man who can lift steel, follow me. The square erupted in motion. Guards rallied, council retainers scrambled, and villagers poured to the walls with torches. The trial was forgotten in a heartbeat. Survival demanded more than words. The gates shuddered under the first ram strike. The sound was bone-rattling, iron on oak. Frosthaven's soldiers lined the parapets, arrows nocked, spears braced. Below, shadows swarmed in the torchlight. Men clad in furs and bone, their faces painted with war masks of skull and ash. But behind them came more, cloaked riders, their eyes glinting unnaturally pale. Rohan's gut tightened. These were no starving raiders. These were soldiers drilled in order, backed by something darker. Aelin appeared at his side on the battlements, her bow strung, her jaw set. Those riders, do you see them? Their eyes, their Kalor's. He didn't need telling. Already he felt the crystal's pulse answer theirs, a silent recognition, like wolves sniffing one another across snow. The ram struck again, wood splintering. The men below howled, voices carrying like a storm wind. Archers, Rohan bellowed, loose. A hail of arrows darkened the air. Screams rose from below as shafts found flesh, but the riders lifted their pale hands. Frost bloomed upward, shattering arrowheads to ice dust before they struck. The crowd on the walls gasped. Kalor's sorcery was here. Inside the walls, chaos brewed. Lady Eris hissed at her guards to pull her back toward her manor, even as others called her a coward. Dareth shouted orders with trembling authority, his voice nearly drowned by the roar outside. The people were breaking, fear spreading faster than the fire from their torches. Rohan turned to his men, his voice carrying over the din. Hold the gate. Every heartbeat we stand is one more for our children to flee behind us. This is Frosthaven, it does not fall while we still draw breath. For a moment, his voice steadied them. A cheer rose, ragged but real. The ram struck a final time. With a crack like thunder, the gates burst inward. Splinters flew, men screamed, and the enemy surged through in a black tide. Steel met steel in the torchlight. The clash was immediate and brutal. Frosthaven's front rank staggered but held, spears piercing, shields smashing. Yet the riders slipped past like shadows, cutting down defenders with unnatural grace. Rohan leapt from the wall into the fray below, landing with a crash of steel and snow. His sword flashed, cutting through the first raider. He felt the crystal flare, frost racing up his blade as the man froze mid-scream. Another came, and each fell the same. The enemy faltered for a heartbeat, seeing their dead turned to statues of ice. But the riders only laughed, their pale voices echoing like glass breaking. One raised his hand and pointed at Rohan. The wolf wears the chain, he hissed. Our master calls you home. Kalor's voice whispered in Rohan's skull, amused and intimate. Yes, come to me, wolf. You will not fight me forever. Tonight, you fight for me. Rohan gritted his teeth and struck again, frost and fire of battle clashing in his veins. But as the melee raged, Aelin's voice rang out from the walls. Look, all eyes turned upward. Over the storm clouds above Frosthaven, a shape moved, vast, winged, and unnatural. Black as night, scales glistening with frost. A dragon, long thought dead in the north, descending with a roar that shattered the night. The roar split the night like the sky itself was tearing open. Soldiers dropped weapons, peasants clutched their ears, even the riders faltered in their slaughter. Above Frosthaven, wings blotted the stars. Each beat sent snow billowing from the rooftops. The dragon descended. It was no creature of flesh and flame as told in southern tales, but a beast of frost and shadow. Its scales shimmered with ice light, its breath spilling mist that froze banners mid-flutter. When it roared again, the sound carried the weight of centuries, hunger, rage, and chains remembered. Rohan staggered back as shards of memory seared through him. He had seen such a beast before, not alive, but bound in his dreams. The heart in his chest pulsed in recognition, echoing the beast's cry. It knows me, he realized. Or it knows what I carry. The creature landed on the shattered gates with a crash, splintering timbers, scattering raiders and defenders alike. Its eyes glowed white, not with nature's fire, but with Kalor's sorcery. The riders fell to their knees. Behold the herald, one cried. The firstborn walks again. Panic tore through Frosthaven. Families fled deeper into the streets, guards broke formation, and lords screamed orders that no one heard. The dragon's head swung toward the keep, frost building in its throat. Aelin's voice cut through the chaos. Rohan, if it breathes, the city dies. He knew it, his men knew it, but what could a sword do against such a thing? His only weapon was the curse bound to him, the crystal pulsing like a second heart, hungering for release. The beast loosed its breath. A torrent of white fire surged toward the square, turning stone to rime, torches to icicles. Screams erupted. Rohan lifted his sword, and instinct, or something darker, took him. Frost exploded outward, clashing with the dragon's breath in a storm of ice against ice. The square shook as the two forces collided, the air thick with freezing mist. For a heartbeat, the attack held. The people of Frosthaven stared in disbelief. Their lord had caught a dragon's breath. But the crystal screamed inside him. Power surged, threatening to tear muscle from bone. He could feel Kaelor's laughter, mocking, triumphant. You cannot hold it without me, wolf. You cannot stand without my leash. His knees buckled. The frost wall cracked. Then Aelin was there, her hand seizing his arm, her voice in his ear. You are not alone. Do not give it to him, hold it for us. Her words steadied him, barely. With a final roar, he shoved forward, the frost wall shattering outward in a blast that drove the dragon back a pace. The beast screeched, wings beating, knocking men to the ground like leaves in a gale. But it was not defeated. It circled, rising again into the storm, frost swirling from its wings. The enemy howled in renewed frenzy. The riders surged, striking Frosthaven's walls as the dragon climbed for another pass. Rohan gasped, his sword rimmed with black ice, his veins alight with fire and frost. Aelin gripped him, her eyes hard. You can't meet it alone, she said. We need more than steel. We need the heart itself. Rohan shook his head, teeth clenched. If I unleash it, there will be nothing left of me to return. Better ashes than chains, she snapped. The words struck deep. Another roar shook the heavens. The dragon dove once more, its maw opening wide, frostfire blazing. The people of Frosthaven screamed. Soldiers dropped shields. The council lords fled into the keep. And Rohan, torn between his city and his soul, lifted the crystal high. It flared, brighter than the pyres of 1,000 dead, answering the dragon's call. The night seemed to shatter around him. Frost spiraled from the dragon's wings like shards of glass, lightning white and razor sharp. The city below screamed, a chorus of terror that pressed against Rohan's chest as if the air itself were heavy with despair. He tightened his grip on the crystal, feeling it pulse in rhythm with the heartbeat of the city, with his own faltering pulse. Every nerve screamed that this was madness. No man could face a dragon alone, let alone one born of frost and sorcery. But this was no ordinary dragon. He knew that now. Its eyes were Kaelor's, and every beat of its wings carried the sorcerer's will. Every flake of frost, every icy shard, was a whisper in the wolf's ear. Submit, Rohan. Bend, or break. The dragon dove, claws outstretched, teeth bared. The roar of its fury shook stone from the keep's battlements. Rohan leapt forward, feeling the crystal hum in his chest, and for a heartbeat he became something more. Something neither man nor curse, but the Iceborn, forged in battle and shadow. Frost clashed with frost, the dragon's icy breath meeting the explosion of power from the crystal. The shockwave knocked soldiers to the ground, threw banners into the air, shattered windows. And in the eye of that storm, Rohan stared into the dragon's gaze, into Kaelor's mocking smile, and made his choice. He would not be the leash. He would not be the weapon. He would be the wolf. The crystal flared, tendrils of black frost wrapping around his arms, flowing into the sword in his hand. Rohan roared, a sound that carried over the wails of the city, the cries of men, and the storm itself. He thrust the sword forward. The frost that erupted from the blade was alive, writhing, feeding on the dragon's own magic. The beast faltered, talons scraping stone, wings beating desperately. Its roar became a scream of pain and disbelief. Rohan's power did not waver. It surged, a tide of ice and shadow that encased the dragon from snout to tail in a cocoon of black-white frost. Time hung suspended. The city held its breath. And then, the cocoon cracked. The dragon's roar turned into a silence that chilled the heart. Its eyes met Rohan's one last time, bright white, cruel, mocking, but powerless. Kaelor's laughter exploded in Rohan's mind, wild and furious. You dare? You dare? Rohan fell to his knees, the crystal dimming to a quiet glow. His limbs shook violently, his lungs burned, and the city seemed impossibly far away. Aelin dropped to his side, gripping his arm. You did it, she whispered, tears streaking her frost-bitten cheeks. Rohan's voice rasped, broken but defiant. Not I, we. Frosthaven lives. The dragon was gone, banished or broken, he could not tell. But Kaelor's laughter lingered, like the echo of wind in empty halls. This is not the end, Wolf. The leash remains. Around him, soldiers and citizens alike emerged from the wreckage, eyes wide, mouths open in awe and fear. The Iceborn had faced the impossible and survived, but at a cost. The crystal hummed faintly against his chest, a reminder that victory was never free. The council arrived at the gates the next morning, grim-faced, silent, bearing no praise, only questions. But Rohan, still trembling from the battle, lifted his head, his gaze hard. Ask your questions, he said. But know this. Frosthaven stands because we fight, together. Aelin's hand brushed against his, steady, grounding him. And together, we will face whatever comes next. The wind swept through the streets of Frosthaven, carrying whispers of awe, fear, and reverence. The name, Iceborn, spread faster than fire in dry grass, a symbol of power, sacrifice, and defiance. But in the shadows, Kaelor watched, plotting, patient, and ever cruel. For the wolf had struck, and the leash had bit back. And the war between frost and fire, curse and will, had only just begun. And somewhere, deep in the mountains north of Frosthaven, a new threat stirred, drawn by the echo of battle and the heartbeat of the heart itself. The chapter closed on the city shivering under the frost-laden night sky, but the story, their story, was far from over.